In celebration of National Whole Grains Month, all month long I've been featuring a different grain, and this week it's emmer. Hey friends, it's Barbara Sue at Kowalski Mountain, and welcome back to the homestead. So this week is the final week of the National Whole Grains Month series, and today I saved, I'm going to say the hardest for last. So today I am going to feature emmer in my recipe. And emmer is a grain that I've never used before, and I'm really not familiar with it. So we are definitely going to be learning together today. Let's go ahead and kick off with some fun facts since we're all learning together. Now, emmer is one of the original ancient grains, and like einkorn, it really disappeared from use, and because of that, it was protected from a lot of the changes that have been done to modern wheat. Now, emmer is a two-row hulled wheat, which is called farro, and we talked a little bit about farro with the other grains we've done. Farro would also include einkorn and spelt. Emmer is a tetraploid and contains 28 chromosomes instead of 42. Now, it is a high-protein wheat, and it's used for pastas, breads, pilafs, and flatbreads. And it's really kind of pretty. That's like picture perfect wheat, like what you would expect to see when you see fields of wheat. Now, while emmer is used for bread, we're not going to expect a rise like we would get from a modern wheat. It is going to be a denser bread. And I have to tell you, I almost just did a flatbread, just so not to be disappointed with the rise. But I already made tortillas in this series, and I wanted to do something a little bit different for today's recipe. So I am going to be very brave. I went to my Essential Home Ground Flour book by Sue Becker, and I think I shared with you in one of my other videos, in her index, she lists flours, and then she lists what recipes in her books those flours would be good for. And she didn't have but one for emmer, and that is challah. Now, challah is a special egg-rich braided yeast bread, and it was traditionally eaten by the Jewish people on Sabbath and holidays. Now, traditional challah doesn't have any dairy in it, such as milk or butter, but Sue does put some milk in this particular recipe. Now, I am going to be even braver, and I am going to try to do a braid, which I have never done before either. So, you know what? We're going to do all kinds of firsts today, and we're going to hope it comes out well. Now, let's go ahead and open up this grain and get our first look at it. Now, today's emmer is from Grand Teton's Ancient Grains, and I want to remind you, if you've been watching the series, that they have been generous enough to give us a limited discount code. You can use the code KMountain with my link below to save 10% on your order. Now, this is a limited code, only good until October 31st, 2025, but be sure to take advantage. And as a small business, I really appreciate you using my links. Now I'm going to bring you in close so you can see how clean this grain is. Now you can see that this has a really deep weedy color to it, and like all of the other grains I've gotten from Grand Teton's Ancient Grains, it is just a gorgeous grain. Now we're going to go ahead and mill this. Now for today's recipe, I need to do 7 to 7.5 cups of flour. So I have measured out 5 cups of grain, and we're going to see how close that gets us. Now that the flour is milled, let's do a couple more fun facts before we continue with our bread making. Now this comes from Bluebird Grain Farm's website, and as we already talked about, Emmer is one of the whole wheats that needs extra processing to remove that hard outer hull like einkorn and spelt. Now some Emmer is pearled. Now when a grain is pearled, it loses part of that outer hull or the bran, which makes it no longer a whole grain based on the definition of whole grains by the Whole Grains Council. Now our Emmer is from Ancient Grains, and it is not a pearled grain. So this is a 100% whole grain. Now you can also use Emmer in lots of different ways. You can use it in salads, cereals, pilafs, and soup, and you would cook that very much like you would rice. Now Emmer is nutritious. Now it has about 20% protein. It has abundant trace minerals, which include iron, zinc, magnesium, and niacin. And it's also a really good source of fiber like all of our ancient grains. Now so far in my research here that we've been doing this morning, I haven't learned a lot about the flavor of it. I do know it's going to be a more rich grain, and it's going to have a real bold flavor. So we'll see how the bread goes. Now let's go ahead and start mixing it up. Now as always, I'm going to be using my Bosch Universal Plus mixer. This is my favorite mixer, especially for bread making when I'm using whole grains, because these are heavier flours, and it does take a powerful machine to handle this heavy dough. Now I'm going to be just using the standard bread hook that comes with this machine for today's recipe. Now I did heat up my water. We're going to add some olive oil. And we're going to add some honey. Now I like to put my honey right in with the oil because that helps it come out of the measuring cup a little bit better. We're going to add some milk, and as I said, in traditional challah you would not have any milk, but this recipe by Sue Becker does have milk added to it. We're going to add our eggs. Now I always crack my eggs into a separate container when using fresh eggs. It's just good practice. Now I did a double check on this recipe because it has a lot of salt in it. This actually has a tablespoon of salt in it. It seems like a lot to me, but we're gonna go with it. Now we're going to start adding our flour, and I need 7 to 7.5 cups. Now I don't think I showed you this. Let me show it to you before we get too far. Now this grain has a real rich, earthy look to it. You can see the browns and the speckles of the bran in it. It's really kind of pretty. Now when you're using your Bosch Universal Plus mixer, you always want to use it with this ring on top of it, but my absolute favorite part is the cover. And that's going to contain all of that flour, so I make less of a mess in the kitchen. Now right now this dough has a real kind of wet look to it. Now with all of my breads I'd like to do an autolaze. Now I'm going to do about an hour with this bread. We're going to let it absorb its moisture, let that bran soften up, and I can't wait to move on to the next step. Now you might notice I have not added the yeast yet. I don't add my yeast until after my autolaze. Alright, now the autolaze has completed. And since I had warmed the water and everything, I always wrap it in a towel just to keep my dough warm, because now we're going to add the yeast. Now in this method, I just sprinkle the yeast right on top. And this recipe uses 2 tablespoons. Now I don't know if that's because the Emmer doesn't have as much gluten in it, so we're helping it out with yeast. I don't know. Now one thing that you don't do is you don't knead your bread with your cover on, because that's going to build up too much heat inside the mixer. Now this ring is supposed to stay on when you're using the mixer, so that's going to stay in place. Now this is only going to knead for about 7 minutes. My Bosch Universal Plus mixer is a very powerful mixer, and so that should do the job. Now this dough is looking really wet, and I have added some more flour to it. Now I feel like this dough is just getting more and more wet looking. So I want to do this the old-fashioned way. I'm going to get out my dough mat. This is my Nutrimel silicone dough mat. I love this thing. It's not going to slip. It keeps my sink covers from getting all nasty, and it's really easy to clean and to use. Now I do have a boo-boo on my finger here, so ouch. I am going to wear a glove while I'm doing this dough. I have a Band-Aid on it, but it doesn't want to stay on very good, so let's just use a little extra precaution. I have never had a dough come out like this before. And this glove is not my friend. Well, the dough feels pretty good. It's just super sticky. Now I have added like a cup more of flour at this point. And you can see it feels really soft. Like the dough itself is nice and soft. So I really think we're ready to go into our first rise. I am going to oil my bowl in hopes that it doesn't stick to that. And this is a mess. It's just so sticky. Huh. That is a sticky ball of dough. It is really difficult to work with. Now we're going to let that rise for about 40 minutes to an hour, and we're going to come back to shape the challah. And I'm so nervous about that. It's so sticky. So hopefully that's going to go really well. All right, now my dough is about finished resting, but I thought we would do another fun fact before we go on and shape the challah. Now this fun fact is from Ancient Grains website, and it said that like many ancient grains, Emmer went through a rediscovery. And it was discovered in Rosh Pina, a small town in northern Israel. And it became the focus of, it's a gentleman, Aronson, and I'd say he studies agriculture based on the comments here. But he learned that Emmer was able to thrive in harsh climates. You know, that was important because a lot of the things that we do to the soils and things, that was much more difficult for them in those days. While they could do it, and of course we've learned a lot from them, things that grew well in harsh climates met the difference between people starving or not. You know, that makes something like emmer a very important grain to those people. Now, emmer has been found in ancient tombs and archaeological excavations, and of course it's been referenced in the Bible as well. Now, it can be found growing all over the world. Emmer is most prevalent in Italy, where it can actually be found in supermarkets and bakeries. Now there, they boil it and use it more like a cereal, but they also use it in bread and whole grains in soups. Now, you know, other than rice and maybe pasta, I don't really put a lot of whole grains in my soup, so maybe that's something I'll try. Now, another thing that they do with emmer is they make risotto. And risotto always seems very fancy to me. Now we haven't talked about price. Let's do that. Now in a smaller bag, in a 7.5 pound bag, and this is on ancientgrains.com, emmer is definitely a more expensive grain. It goes in a 7.5 pound bag, it goes for $3.04 a pound. And if you buy that by a larger bag in bulk at 48 pounds, you're going to get it for $2.54 a pound. And I think that's the most expensive grain we've talked about in this series. Now, don't forget, I have that discount code. If you're interested in using emmer, you can use my exclusive discount code KMountain, which is good until October 31st, 2025. And be sure to use that link below. Now, since this is so much bread dough, I think I'm going to use part of it and make a regular loaf, and the rest I'm going to make in the challah. Now, I also did a little research while I was waiting on this, and I kind of feel like this was starting to get over kneaded because towards the end it was getting super sticky, it was starting to spread back out, and I think it was getting over kneaded, and I did not over knead the time limit. I didn't even do 6 minutes, I don't believe, so that happened super fast. Now, in this wheat, it has a more delicate gluten structure than modern wheats that I'm used to, and probably you're used to also. So I think I'm gonna do about this much. For the bread. Let's go ahead and do the bread loaf first. So I have just a loaf pan here. Now I'm going to be kind of gentle with my shaping on this because if I've over kneaded it, I don't need to over handle it anymore. Trying to find the best side. None of them look beautiful. we're just going to put that in this loaf pan. And I'm going to do a regular loaf of bread with this. Now with this, I am kind of excited about this, and I hope it goes well. I should stop experimenting on YouTube, because if it doesn't go well, you get to do it with me. So we're going to cut this into 4 pieces. Really, I need this little one is kind of small. Now I'm going to shape these into long ropes, because a challah is a braided bread. And I think that's why I'm excited about it, because I've never done a braided bread before. And I want to kind of get these lengths about the same length. Okay, now I'm going to set you up so you can see me braid it. Now keep in mind, I've never done this before. I watched a video this morning and I think I can do it. I'm going to try my best. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put these top pieces together, and I'm going to kind of pinch them together. Now we have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so the way that we're going to do this is we're going to cross over 2. Got little snakes going on here. And then we're going to cross over 1. And I'm already falling off the table here. Now this one, we're going to go to the 2 into the second one, and we're going to cross over 2. And I already feel like this is wrong. Let me watch the video again. This is getting super long. Look at that. Okay, so I did it wrong. So we're going to do 2 and then 1. And then this one, that's already wrong. Okay, let's just start right here. So we're going to do this one over 2, stretching so bad. And then this one, this looks terrible. Well, friends, I know this looks like I gave up pretty quickly, because you can see this is going downhill super fast. So I had a couple of choices. I could keep fussing with this, keep trying to get it to braid, and overwork my dough, and then it would feel like I was trying to eat shoe leather, because my bread was tough and dense and overworked. So I made an executive decision, you know, as the head chef here at Kowalski Mountain, that I'm not going to try the challah. While I was struggling with the braiding technique, the dough was just not working with me, and I decided to just go ahead and make a loaf of bread and save my bread dough. So maybe I'll learn. Let's not try new things on YouTube, having never practiced them before. We're just going to shape it into a loaf of bread. Well, that certainly did not go as planned. It was just too stretchy. It was stretching with every movement, and I just couldn't get the strands to hold their shape well. So I'll practice that and see if I can master it. Now we're going to let that bread rise, and we are still going to have some delicious Emmer bread. It's just not going to look fancy. Alright, now my bread dough has risen, and the one that's here in the Pullman pan I'm not going to egg wash because it's all the way to the top. It's going to make beautiful sandwich bread. For this one I did mix up an egg wash, so this is 1 egg with a tablespoon of water. It's just going to make it look pretty. Now it's not going to be a braid, which that's so sad. But that's okay. That dough just wasn't cooperating with me, and I can accept. It's okay. And I do have some sesame seeds, which will just make it look pretty. I keep sesame seeds mostly on hand for making hamburger buns. Alright, these are going to go in the oven, and I'll show you when they're done. Hey friends, I'm back. Now the Emmer bread is in the oven, but what I have behind me is my regular sandwich bread. Now that sandwich bread I make with hard white wheat and kamut, and it's a 50-50 split. And it's amazing to me because those recipes are very similar in quantity of ingredients. Like I looked at the comparison of liquids to wheat, and it's very similar. So to see the gluten structure in the wheat reacting so differently is really amazing, which is why I've jumped in here, because I want you to see the difference between this wheat that has a stronger gluten structure. Now all I did was mix an ancient grain with hard white wheat. That's just amazing to me, the difference that hard white really made in giving that bread a better structure. Now this recipe is actually on my blog, and I do have a video about it, which I'll put down in the description box for you. But today is all about Emmer, so I can't wait to see how that bread comes out. Alright, now the bread just came out of the oven, and I'm sure if you've watched any of my videos, you know that my oven overbrowns, and you can see this was overbrowning a little bit. I'm just going to take it out of the pan. Now it looks really good actually. I'm not going to cut it yet. I am going to let it cool. Let's go ahead and look at the one in the Pullman pan. Now you can see that stuck to the top a little bit. Now I always dump these out of my Pullman pans right away. Now this is my favorite pan for making sandwich bread. You can see how that makes a perfect square loaf. This end's a little bit better actually. And honestly, I'm actually pretty impressed with this. It rose pretty good. I expected it wasn't going to rise near as well as it did. But I am pretty impressed with that. So I'm going to let these cool, and then we're going to cut it open and have it with some butter. I can't take it any longer. This is still warm. So I'm going to cut it in the middle. It actually has a beautiful looking texture. Now the reason you cut them in the middle is because now I can put them back together and keep those ends sealed. Now this is my spreadable butter, and I have a blog post about how I make spreadable butter. I keep it in the fridge, and it's made with just 2 ingredients. And you don't have to worry what they are. They are ingredients that are good for you, and you can make it at home and get rid of that margarine tub. Now let's try this bread. It definitely has a dense texture to it. I think it's fantastic. It doesn't even have that robust of a flavor. Like when I think of hard red wheat is very wheaty, has a very robust flavor, but this tastes wonderful. It's not overly earthy, or it just tastes like good bread. I'm disappointed that it didn't turn out to be pretty like a challah. And I was half tempted, because I'm making my regular sandwich bread today as well. I'm doing all the kitchen things today. I was half tempted to try to braid that, but I really needed hamburger buns and dinner rolls instead, so I did that so we could have those things. But I could have done that with this. This is so good. And I'm so glad I cut it into it warm, because that was amazing. I'm just really impressed that it rose so well. It is a little dense, but it's not overly heavy. It has a great texture. It has a great flavor, but it's not overwhelming. It's really good. It's really good, actually. I have to say, I'm totally impressed with Emmer. And maybe I'll have to find some other ways to incorporate it into my baking. Well, friends, I want to remind you of my special discount code for the National Whole Grains Month. That's K Mountain. That's good until October 31st, 2025 at ancientgrains.com. Be sure to get the link down below. I really appreciate you using my affiliate link. It means the world to our small business. Now, as always, I really appreciate you watching, especially to the very end. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, hit that button. I'd love you to be a part of the Kowalski Mountain family. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.